상말로 다시들래 따타리데 비미게라 행 두주레주 아니 손지 슈가 먼저 이기 개사 런던도 페발라 다른 건주기 필리핀다 망부지다 아마세 건술라 겹존난게기 아니 겹조와 망부지 페샷 다른 기 니모데 기체 된제지다지체 아수수 두주에 땅체 미라 단달레바 있네데 녀말레네 로방부 droa 있네데 이네 수수기 모다 페바 이마데 마체네 안타리 케라스 데라 두주디 내가 진보지지 페와데라 닝 탁반네 토지체 가딘체 악주다 제스유라예 Tashi telling everyone on behalf of Tibetan community in Britain and our organizing partners Free Tibet and Global Alliance for Tibet and Persecuted Minorities, I would like to thank you for taking out your time from your hectic schedule in London today at 10 Downing Street to observe and commemorate the 66th Tibetan Uprising Day. On this day, in 1959, Tibetans in thousands rose up to Chinese illegal occupation, protesting, and with courage and bravery, fought fearlessly for the increased repression and threat to their culture, identity, and freedom. Many were brutally tortured, thousands lost lives and imprisoned. Today, on this 66th Tibetan Uprising Day, on remembering their courage, we the Tibetans around the world will galvanize our movement, resistance, with a spirit of oneness, stronger than ever, with hope and resilience. We'll fight for the truth and justice, for the restoration of freedom inside Tibet. No matter how long our journey will take, no matter how hard CCP try to sinicize Tibet, no matter how hard, how brutal Chinese strategies will apply, no matter how hard CCP try to indoctrinate our Tibetan children, remember, we Tibetans are the unshakables. We shall fight until our last breath for our stolen nation, my country, our beloved motherland, Tibet. Inside China, the battle for Tibet, China's growing control over Tibet, is a true story. Shame on China. So today, I want to begin a program with the first one. For us, we are going to start with the Tibetan national anthem. Thank you. So now we are going to have 1 minute silence to honor Tibetan martyrs. Let's start. Thank you, Kachana. And after this, we are going to sing a Tibetan National Uprising Day song, Mimang Langlu, Rise Up Our Comrades. Hello, Tochena, and my name is Tenzin Sangmo. I'm the regional coordinator of Tibetan Community in Britain. So today we are going to start the speech from the first speaker we have, Kusat, Tibetan Community in Britain, our youth coordinator.
My dear brothers and sisters in Tibet and supporters of freedom around the world, as we gather here today to commemorate the 66th anniversary of Tibetans rising against the Chinese invasion in 1959, I want to send a message to those inside Tibet. You are not alone. Every single day we stand with you in solidarity. No matter what we do in exile, we know that our resistance is nothing without the courage and determination of our beloved Tibetans inside Tibet. For my father's generation, the occupation of Tibet was not history, it was the lived experience. My father grew up witnessing Chinese rule over Tibet, and as a young father, his greatest hope was his children would carry forward the spirit of resistance. His Holiness Dalai Lama was his guiding light, the beacon of hope for our future. Like me, thousands of Tibetan children have crossed the Himalayas, following in the footsteps of His Holiness, leaving behind families we may never see again. We make this perilous journey in search of an education that teaches our own language, traditions, and culture, and education we are denied under Chinese rule. Tibetan is not just a language. It is the key to preserving the ancient Indian wisdom of mental well-being, a treasure that humanity cannot afford to lose, especially in the times of global distress. Yet inside Tibet today, even children as young as 3 years old are forcibly placed in colonial boarding schools where Mandarin is the language of instruction. This is not just education, it is erasure, a systematic attempt to sinicize Tibetans into Han Chinese. I know this loss deeply. A few years ago, I lost my father in Lhasa, and I was not there to hold his hand in his final moments. But his last words remain with me. He said, "Be kind, especially to those who cannot think about kindness, and be where our precious jewel is. You will never be lost." Despite the heavy surveillance and suppression in Tibet, I still hear his message loud and clear. It reminds me that I must continue walking in the footsteps of our elders, and that the only true path to freedom is through non-violence. I now live in free country, and I have no immediate relatives in Tibet, and I can speak my mind and participate openly in protest. But I know that many Tibetans around the world do not have this privilege. Those with family inside Tibet live in constant fear of retaliation. Transnational repression follows us wherever we go. Tibetans, Uyghurs, Southern Mongolians, Hong Kongers, and Manchurians all face the long arm of Chinese authoritarian control beyond the homelands. Even Chinese descendants themselves are not safe, and Taiwan faces growing threats of aggression and intimidation. As a stateless person, I see the world differently. Carrying a Tibetan identity that is not legally recognized, I know what it feels like to struggle at immigration checkpoints simply because my existence challenged the narrative of a powerful state. And yet, the mere mention of Tibet, a land with no military, no economic influence, strikes fear in the Chinese Communist Party. The 20th century was an era of bloodshed driven by raw human intelligence and survival instincts. But the 21st century must be different. It must be a century of dialogue. We humans are more than just intelligent beings. We have the capacity to love beyond our race, caste, creed, gender, and nation. We have the power to choose peace. Before I end, let me make one thing clear. Tibet was an independent nation of 1959, before the Chinese Communist invasion. Tibet has every right to fight for the independence. However, under the middle way approach, as an official policy of Tibetan government in exile, we are willing to live within the People's Republic of China if Tibetans are granted genuine autonomy and self-governance. This is not a surrender of our historical independence. It is a pragmatic approach to resolving the Tibetan issue while upholding our resistance against the current repression. But the Chinese Communist Party, despite its global power and its constant repetition of the propaganda, "Welcome to Motherland," remains too afraid to welcome Tibetans in Tibet and around the world for a simple dialogue. As I remember the brave Tibetans back in Tibet and around the world, I pray that may Tibet be free, not only for Tibetans, but for the world. May Tibet be free so that fragile Tibetan environment, the third pole, can continue providing fresh water to the 1.1 billion people downstream without the devastation caused by reckless dam constructions. May Tibet be free so that every person on this earth can access the deep reservoir of ancient Indian wisdom preserved in Tibetan texts and learn the art of true happiness, leading to a more peaceful world. May Tibet be free because every being on this planet, human and non-human, deserve to live with dignity and freedom. And may His Holiness the Dalai Lama live long to continue guiding the world towards non-violence and dialogue, the only true path to lasting peace. The day will come when the world will look to Tibet as an inspiration, a testament to the power of non-violent resistance of an ancient historical country. Pegelo.
Thank you very much, Kusa Sebela, our youth coordinator, a university student. The spirit of Tibetan youth will never die and will live stronger, and we are very proud of you. Give him a big clap. And now next we have Mr. Norman Baker, former MP and minister and former president of Tibetan Society, and a very long-term friend of Tibet. May I hear, sir?
Thank you, and good morning. That was a great speech from your youth coordinator. He was not born when the illegal invasion of Tibet occurred in 1959, or even before 1950 to some degree. But it demonstrates that the spirit of Tibet cannot be extinguished. The horrors which the Chinese Communist Party has visited upon Tibet since 1950, and in 1959 in particular, have been horrendous. An attempt to eradicate Tibetan culture in its entirety, to turn Tibetans into Han Chinese, to destroy the language, to destroy the environment, to ridicule the importance of religion in Tibet. Everything possible has been done to eliminate and eradicate Tibet off the face of the earth. But today, here in London and across the world, and in Tibet itself, I expect, demonstrates that they have failed. They have failed utterly in their attempt to destroy Tibetan culture and what Tibetans stand for. That's a testament to the strength of Tibetan culture and to the determination of Tibetan people inside and outside Tibet to stand up for what they believe in and not be intimidated by the Chinese Communist Party. Now, the people of the UK are in a special position because we were involved in Tibet before 1950. We were involved in most countries, as a matter of fact, before 1950, for better or for worse. But we were there for trade reasons, largely. But we were dealing with an independent nation. We know Tibet was independent. We dealt with an independent government. We recognised that the country had its own currency, its own stamps, its own foreign policy, all the marks, all the hallmarks of an independent country. We even signed deals with the Tibetan government, like the Simla Convention, deals which the Chinese had no part of. And why should they? We were not dealing with the Chinese, we were dealing with the Tibetans. So Britain was in a unique position to know that. And you know what they say to the Chinese government? You cannot change history. History is what it was. And Tibet was and should be an independent country. And you can't just have a wave with a pen and deny that. History is what it is. I think we should call Tibet occupied Tibet, because that's what it is. It's illegally occupied Tibet. Let's not give the Chinese government the cover to suggest that this is somehow not the case. Tibet is illegally occupied. There are UN resolutions relating to Tibet going back to the 1960s. And we should not give up that fight for freedom, for political justice, and of course for the respect that there should be for an independent Tibet in all manifestations. But as has been said by your excellent youth coordinator, this is part of a general attempt by the Chinese government to eradicate anything not Han Chinese in East Turkestan, where they're forcing Muslims to eat pork. In Hong Kong, where the deal reached with the British in 1997 for 50 years of self-government has been ignored, turned over. And Hong Kongers, when I was there, Hong Kong didn't want to be part of mainland China. They recognised that they had a separate identity and wanted to maintain it. Well, that's now been eradicated. And those who stand up for freedom in Hong Kong are put in prison at the least drop of a hat. And we'll see it, I'm afraid, in Taiwan, because the Chinese government has not given up the idea of taking over Taiwan. You know, in this sense, the Chinese Communist Party, which seems to believe it is, I don't know what it believes in, a modern Communist Party, behaves in no way different to how the emperors behaved before 1911 in China. They've learned nothing and forgotten nothing over 100 and something years. But neither have we forgotten. We've not forgotten in this country Tibet was independent. We've not forgotten the contribution that Tibet has made to the culture of the world. We've not forgotten the immense contribution His Holiness the Dalai Lama has made to non-violence and indeed to a proper way of approaching international affairs. We haven't forgotten that. We stand with you on that. I'm very proud to be here with you, showing solidarity on behalf of this nation with Tibet today. I wish you well. Your fight goes on. The truth, history, and the right to proper civilization, those things cannot be extinguished by the Chinese Communist Party, and they will not be. You will, in the end, be successful.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for sharing the history and being wise for Tibet, and also recognizing Tibet as an independent nation. We are very proud of you for being long-term friend of Tibet, and we hope that you will continue to support us. Thank you very much. Please give sir a big clap. And thank you for being here today. And next we have Mr. Luke D. Polford, the Executive Director of Inter-Parliamentary Alliance on China.
Hello everybody, it's a privilege to be here among you, a privilege to follow Mr. Baker and your youth coordinator in their excellent speeches. I am the co-founder and executive director of the Inter-Parliamentary Alliance on China, a group of international cross-party lawmakers now in 40 parliaments who are standing up against the CCP's oppression, increasing aggression abroad, and everything that it's doing to upend the international rules-based system. As we gather to commemorate Tibet National Day, we rightly honor a land of profound spirituality and cultural richness. Yet we have to confront the stark reality of the pressures, of the abuses that are challenging the very essence of Tibetan identity. Tibet has been a beacon of unique cultural and spiritual traditions for centuries. Dr. Lobsang Sangay, the former Sikyong of the Central Tibetan Administration, once said, "The issue of Tibet is not about 6 million Tibetans, it's about justice, human rights and freedom that we all cherish." I want to underline that we all cherish. We've heard words like these spoken so often, yet their significance passes us by. Living in the UK, and we heard this in our first speech, few of us have to confront the loss of these cherished rights. As a result, we simply forget their value. But the former Sikyong's sentiment touches upon something crucial to those of us who believe in human solidarity. The quest to preserve Tibetan heritage isn't just a matter for the people of Tibet. Indeed, it's not just a matter for any single peoples around the world. It's an imperative for everybody. And it's an urgent imperative, because despite the cultural richness, despite the legacy, Tibet has endured severe human rights violations. We heard just now the UN General Assembly passed resolutions expressing grave concern about the violation of Tibetan people's fundamental rights. As early as 1959, the UN highlighted the suppression of the distinctive cultural and religious life of the Tibetan people. More recently, reports indicate that around 1 million Tibetan children are compelled to attend state-run boarding schools, separated from their families, and taught primarily in Mandarin Chinese in this whole effort towards the Sinicization of Tibetan people. This, as we all know, is part of a large program perpetrated upon Tibetans, Uyghurs, and other minorities by the Chinese government, aimed at assimilating them into the majority Han culture, contravening international human rights standards. But the issues don't stop there. Even the land of Tibet bears the scars of oppression. China's plans to construct massive hydroelectric dams on the Yarlung Changpo River threatens to disrupt the river's natural flow, impacting agriculture and access to drinking water downstream. It's so serious that it could impact India and Bangladesh also, who have complained about it. A recent earthquake in Tibet highlighted the seismic risks associated with such large-scale infrastructure projects. That was a 6.8 magnitude quake, resulting in significant casualties and damage to reservoirs. This just shows us how insane the regime's plan is in Tibet. So why don't we hear more about it? Why isn't it front page news? I'm going to offer a couple of reflections from my perspective dealing with international politicians trying to work in defense of Tibet. It's true that the international community has increasingly voiced concerns over Tibet. In 2024, Australia, the United States, 13 other countries criticized alleged human rights abuses in the region. This is one of many recent statements, and the Interparliamentary Alliance on China has also participated in trying to raise awareness. But it's not enough. For too long, Tibet has languished in the too difficult pile, hampered by its perception internationally as a conflict over territory. Beijing is very successful with this strategy. Have you ever noticed a pattern? Every time Beijing persecutes a minority, they justify it with reference to sovereignty and territory. Beijing's leaders have worked hard on the Tibet issue to muddy the waters, making it a complicated territorial dispute in the minds of foreign onlookers. Friends, my experience is this: when an issue becomes a dispute about Chinese territory, we lose. Think of Hong Kong, think of East Turkestan, think of Inner Mongolia. This isn't because people don't care about sovereignty questions, it's because the barriers to entry are very high. In order to debate an issue where sovereignty is disputed, some knowledge of the history of the region is required. Think of the Falkland Islands. In order to take a reasoned position, it's essential to know about their history, about their ownership and development, even when disputed by both sides. My friends, not everybody in Parliament knows about the history of the Falkland Islands, and this is a UK overseas territory. If they don't know about a UK territory, how many do you think know about the history of Tibet? Beijing understands this, which is why I believe they seek to cloak their persecution of Tibetans in sovereignty-related issues. So let's be clear, separating children from their families has nothing to do with sovereignty. Destroying natural habitats and places of cultural importance has nothing to do with sovereignty. Mass forced labor has nothing to do with sovereignty. Now, while some of the issues surrounding your quest for self-determination are unavoidably about sovereignty, it's important to emphasize that the campaign for Tibet isn't solely a campaign for self-determination. Our politicians at all levels have no excuse for failing to decry these heinous abuses. And friends, it's up to us to hold their feet to the fire to ensure that they do. So, as we gather to observe this day, it's imperative to reaffirm our commitment to supporting the Tibetan people's struggle for human rights, environmental preservation and cultural integrity. And this involves, first, awareness. We have to continue educating the global community about the environmental and cultural threats facing Tibet and the egregious human rights abuses being meted out to the Tibetan people. I can't emphasize this enough. In a political environment where MPs aren't picking this up for fear of making a mistake, we need to be teaching them about Tibet patiently, methodically, with objectivity and persistence. Second, advocacy. We have to continue urging governments and international bodies to hold China accountable for human rights violations in Tibet. This means deploying sharp-edge parliamentary tools to force a government response. And you come into this means speaking to your members of parliament. I know that Mr. Baker will underline this. You all have the right to speak to your members of parliament, and it does make a difference. So if you haven't done it, why not? Speak to your representatives, teach them about Tibet, and teach them about what's going on there, and demand that they raise your concerns as a constituent in the House of Commons. Now is the time. We cannot wait any longer. This is urgent. I would also say to those of you who want to express solidarity with other communities persecuted by the Chinese Communist Party, come on the 15th of March to stand outside the prospective site for the new Chinese embassy, outside Royal Mint Court in Tower Bridge on the 15th of March at 3 p.m, where I think thousands will gather again to make known their displeasure at having a massive hub for interference and transnational repression permitted on UK soil. So finally, standing in solidarity, come on the 15th of March, and we will continue to encourage people to stand with you and Tibetan communities in your peaceful efforts to preserve your heritage and identity. As the Dalai Lama once said, if you think you are too small to make a difference, try sleeping next to a mosquito. So, in the spirit of resilience and determination, let's honor our collective responsibility by advocating for a Tibet where human rights are respected, cultures are preserved, and your precious environment is protected. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your insightful guidance and sharing about the pressing current issues of Tibet. And we will follow your guidance, and we'll make sure that we'll create the awareness about Tibet. And also, as you said, that we Tibetans will make sure that we will attend 15 March to stop Chinese from having that mega embassy in Tower Hamlet. And thank you very much, and we really appreciate your solidarity and support, and we hope and request that you will continue to support, because your support means a lot to us at this crucial and critical time for Tibet. Thank you, sir. And now we have the fourth speaker, Mehdi McCall, the Executive Director of International Tibet Network, a very long-term Tibet supporter and an activist. And welcome here, and please say a few words.
Thank you. I'm going to echo what lots of others have already said, but I'd like to start and say it's really an honour for me to be here to say a few words on the 66th anniversary of 1959 Tibetan Uprising. And more specifically, it's an honour for me to witness this turnout, this commitment from you to come here to call for Tibetan freedom. This day marks not only the brutal crackdown in Tibet, but also the enduring spirit of Tibetan endurance. My name is Mandy McKeown, and I'm the Executive Director of International Tibet Network. Our network spans 5 continents. We have 140 plus Tibet group organisations who are members of the network. And together, we display a shield of support for Tibet across the world. Being here today is so important, especially at this really critical time for Tibet. For over 7 decades, the Tibetan people have faced a relentless oppression, systematic erosion of their culture, the suppression of religious freedom, and the denial of fundamental human rights. Today, 7 decades later, Tibet remains under China's occupation. And I'm sure, as so many speakers have already said, you're aware that there's a brutality taking place in Tibet, and not least the strategic colonial boarding school program that separates at least 1 million Tibetan children from their parents and from their culture, children as young as 4 years old. It's a barbaric system, and a system that is designed to erase the Tibetan culture and identity within the next generation. So we're gathered here today, as thousands of others have in cities around the world, because Tibet needs us. It needs us now. It needs us to call on our governments to join together and stand for Tibet. In a few days, the UK's Foreign Secretary, David Lammy, will be meeting with other G7 leaders. And we've been calling on him to take a real stand for Tibet, calling on them, the G7, to understand the urgency of this situation and to take strong multilateral action and call out China's failed Tibet policies. Thousands of people have signed the petition to the G7 leaders, calling on them to take this robust action. And signing petitions does work. Just last week, after we'd built immense pressure, we saw the UN Human Rights Commissioner, Volker Turk, finally raise serious concern about China's colonial boarding schools in Tibet. So if you haven't added your names to this petition, I call on you now to do that. Rashi is holding up a little sign. You can scan the QR code and add your name to the petition. It's going to be delivered very shortly. So despite China's ongoing repression and the brutal crackdowns, Tibetans in Tibet continue to display extraordinary determination, courage and resilience. And we're here to honour the brave men and women who rose up in Lhasa in 1959 and all those who sacrificed their lives for the Tibetan cause. We thank His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama for his unwavering leadership and inspiration. And we remember all of those who've lost their lives, those who remain in prison, and those who continue to resist against the Chinese occupation of Tibet. The Tibetan struggle is a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit, and we must use our freedom to ensure that the courageous Tibetan resistance is not in vain. Tibetans will not be silenced, and we cannot be defeated. We must continue to resist until justice and freedom prevail in Tibet. Later this year, Prime Minister Keir Starmer is expected to go to China, and we must use this opportunity to tell him to use his opportunity to hold China accountable. China must be held accountable for their failed policies in Tibet, and he has an opportunity to not be complacent. So today's wave of solidarity can't stop here, and we must use this moment to further call on the UK government to tackle the situation in Tibet and to call on China to do something about it. So let's commit to raise our voices to another level. Let's send a massive roar of support from here, across the Tibetan plateau, all the way to the Chinese leaders in Beijing. Bog Yellow.
Hello. Thank you, Maddie. And I'm from Bristol, and Maddie is also from Bristol. And very happy to see you here today. And International Tibet Network is a very instrumental organization in planning, strategic planning in Tibet activism and action of the Tibetan support organizations. And please don't forget to sign the petition for calling G7 to challenge China's abuse in Tibet. So thank you very much, all of you, for your time and gathering here today. And on behalf of Tibetan Community in Britain and our organizing partner, we would like to offer a scarf to the speakers to thank you for your time and solidarity. And our community chairperson, President, Mr. Pinzo Nobula, will offer the scarf. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Mr. Luke. Thank you. And Maddie. Thank you very much for your kind speech and for your support, and for our youth coordinator, our very own youth coordinator, Kunsan Setal, and our campaign manager, campaign coordinator. Thank you. Well done. Thank you very much for coming here and supporting our Tibetan cause and being here despite your hectic schedule, especially to our Tibetan supporters. And we're going to start a few slogans here. Free Tibet! Free Tibet! Free Tibet! Free Tibet! Free Tibet! Shame on! China! Shame on! China! China, China, China! Out, out, out! China, China, China! Out, out, out! China, China, China! Out, out, out! What do we want? school in Tibet. Okay? Shut down, shut down! Shut down, shut down! We demand! We demand! We demand! China, China, China! China, China, China! Tibet belongs to! Tibet belongs to! Piggy Tabo! UNO! We want justice! UNO! We want justice! UNO! We want justice! Wake up, wake up! Wake up, wake up! You wake up, wake up! China, China, China! China, China, China! Stop the torture! Stop the torture! Stop the killing! Stop the killing! Stop the genocide! Stop the genocide! Stop the repression! Stop the repression! China, China, China! China, China, China! Xi Jinping! Shame on you! Xi Jinping! Shame on you! Xi Jinping! Shame on you! Free Tibet! What do we want? Free Tibet! Shame, shame! China shame! Shame, shame! China shame! Shame, shame! China shame! Shame, shame! China shame! China, China, China! China, China, China! Human rights! Human rights! Human rights! Stop the genocide! Stop the genocide! Stop the killing! Stop the killing! Stop the killing! What do we want? Free Tibet! What do we want? Free Tibet! When do we want it? Now! When do we want it? Now! Shame, shame! China shame! Shame, shame! China shame! Shame, shame! China shame! Piggy Tabo! Piggy Tabo! Longsha, longsha! Longsha, longsha! Longsha, longsha! Shame, shame! China shame! Shame, shame! China shame! Human rights! Human rights! Religious freedom! Religious freedom! Stop the killing! Stop the torture! Stop the torture! Stop the genocide! Stop the genocide! Free Tibet! Free Tibet! Free Tibet! Free Tibet! So at the crossroads, please mindful and follow the guidance of the steward. And also we need one more volunteer to hold the placard, everyone. Yeah, please collect from here.
선배 했어. 했어.
Everyone.
영국인 뭐 치시?
Very good.
먼저 여기려 지금 와. 소스야 준주는 똑바로 할 때.
Yalo Chek Nye Sum. Now we are going to have some speeches here. So the first one is Mr. Tinzin Abdullah from Free Tibet.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you all for coming out today. I'm going to keep my speech relatively short, as what can I say about March 10th that we all don't already know? That we've lost our homeland 66 years ago, that our parents, our ancestors were forced to flee. So my fellow Tibetans, friends and supporters, today we gather to affirm a simple but powerful truth, that for decades China has sought to erase us through violence, repression and manipulation. But despite their best efforts, they have failed. Our spirit remains undefeated. Tibetans are still here, still standing, and still fighting for the freedom we deserve. This year, His Holiness the Dalai Lama turns 90. For 9 decades, he has carried Tibet in his heart, leading with wisdom, compassion, and an unshakable belief in justice. His guidance reminds us that our struggle is not one of hatred, but of truth and resilience. Inside Tibet, that resilience endures in everyday acts of courage. In exile, it thrives in the strength of our global community. We are not just surviving, we are rising. So today, let us be clear. Tibetans decide Tibet's future, not Beijing. Our movement is alive, our voices are heard, and we will never stop fighting, and Tibet will be free. Pegelo! Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rapala. As you said, Tibet will be free. Thank you. And now we are going to have Rahima from Uyghur community to say a few words.
Thank you very much, and it's an honor and a privilege to be here with everyone. Dear friends, brothers and sisters, today we gather to honor the courage and the sacrifice of the Tibetan people who 66 years ago rose against oppression. Their struggle for freedom, dignity, and the right to live as their true selves continues to this day. As an Uyghur, I stand here in solidarity because our pain is shared. The same regime that silenced Tibetans has also torn my people apart, erasing our language, our culture, and our very existence. Tibetans and Uyghurs are bound by more than suffering. We are bound by resilience. We refuse to be erased. We refuse to be silent. And together we refuse to give up the fight for justice. To the Tibetan people, your strength inspires us all. Your unwavering spirit reminds the world that no amount of oppression can crush the will of a people determined to be free. And to the governments watching in silence, know this: justice delayed is not justice denied. The world is waking up. and history will remember those who stood with Tibet, the Uyghurs, Hong Kongers, and all oppressed people, or those who chose to look away. Today we remember, today we resist, and together we will see a free Tibet, a free Uyghur homeland, and a future where all people can live with dignity. Freedom for Tibet. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rahima. We share the same stories and same pain, and thank you for coming here and to share your solidarity. We will work in collaboration to press down the China to free your community, Uyghurs and Tibet, and all those who are under Chinese oppression. Thank you for coming here and sharing your thoughts and speech. Thank you. And now we have Rowena Field from York Tibet Support Group.
Yes, I'm Rowena from York Tibet Support Group. We've been active since 2008. Closer, is that better? Since 2008, I've been coming here for the Tibet Hour out of the tent. I thought it might be interesting if I can just explain why I keep coming. So, the first thing is to be in solidarity with the Tibetan people, especially in the active remembrance of everybody who suffered so terribly in the 10th of March 1959, and also for all those who continue to suffer and pay the terrible price, at a great cost over decades now. Second reason is because I admire the Tibetan struggle hugely. I'm incredibly touched by the resilience and the endurance, also the profound commitment to non-violence, which I find totally inspiring. That's another reason actually. The third reason is to express my gratitude, especially because I'm very aware that through the sufferings of the Tibetan people, we in the West have benefited hugely through the transmission of Tibetan Buddhism particularly. The teachings
Can you watch this? Yeah, I'll watch that.
He's amazing. Very rich in terms of teachings, non-violence, kindness and tolerance, as well as support. Also, in recent years, he's been very active in supporting the environment, particularly at this time when things are so fragile and precarious. When I come on these marches on the 10th of March, I also see it as a time to renew my own commitment to the Tibetan cause, and also to make it an active commitment. So this year, for example, I'm working with TCB to plant 90 trees, to run a project planting 90 trees in celebration of His Holiness Dalai Lama's 90th birthday. And that's beginning to take shape. We now have a beautiful site in Yorkshire with trees. So that's taking shape and hopefully will continue to this year. Finally, looking ahead, it's a long haul being a Tibet supporter. There are no easy wins, no quick fixes, but I'm in it for the long haul. And I think we'll continue to return on the 10th of March every year, because at the heart of it, quite simply, I am honoured and very moved to be a supporter of Tibet and the Tibetan cause. Wish you all the very best of luck. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rowan. Please give her a big clap. Thank you for sharing your reason to be here and for being a very long-term friend of Tibet. And we really appreciate for your solidarity and coming here. And Rowan has just shared, maybe some of you might not have heard, that there is a plan of tree plantation project, planting 90 trees on His Holiness the Dalai Lama birthday. And we found the space in Europe here, and she's leading that. And so in future, we are going to send the emails to sponsor a tree for the tree plantation for His Holiness the Dalai Lama, long life, for his 90th birthday. Quite exciting about this. Thank you very much. And thank you. And now we are going to have Mr. J&G, founder of Freedom Card, representing Hong Kong.
Free Tibet! Free Tibet! Free Tibet! Free Tibet! Free Tibet! Free Tibet! Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Jay, a Hong Kong activist living in Manchester. Thank you for the invitation of the organizer to give me a chance to speak here. Today, I'm standing here for showing support and solidarity to Tibetans and commemorate the 66th anniversary of Tibetan National Uprising Day. For more than 6 decades, China has tightly controlled Tibet and its brutal repression continues. Although 16-point agreement was signed on 1951 between the Tibet government and CCP central government, this agreement was masterminded by CCP central government in Beijing actually, and imposed upon the Tibetan government's representatives in Russia. CCP authorities threatened to send more military personnel to crash down the Tibetans. Otherwise, they will get killed, right? Everyone knows this history. And to avoid this happen, the Tibetans have to sign this so-called agreement to have peace deal with this terrible government from China. And the CCP government never fully complied with those agreements, while the victim tried their best to do it. CCP finally launched a massive military crackdown over Tibetans. I would say it was a massacre. What I learned from this is we can never trust the dictator. We can never negotiate with the terrorists who kill our friends and families. Personally, I highly respect the Dalai Lama's leadership, which successfully formed an exiled government to keep Tibetans' identity and support, and establish a network of Tibetans, such as their settlements, life settlement, schools, hospitals, monasteries, as well as cultural institutions. It is definitely helpful to people around the world to keep talking about Tibetan issues. Of course, the efforts of the Tibetans cannot be ignored. Last year, on 4th of June, Hong Kong Community organized a rally in Manchester about Tiananmen Square massacre. We invite a Tibetan representative to give a speech, a public speech. I remember that there was a 9-year-old Tibetan girl to talk about the history of Tibetans and the belief in fighting for their freedom, justice, and independence. It was really amazing and inspiring to me. I can say Hong Kongers are still learning from you, all of you. Talking about freedom, I always say freedom is not free. I believe you must pay so many bloody costs. As a Hong Konger, I have a serious lessons 6 years ago related to the anti-extradition law amendment bill movement. We have many protesters and friends who got attacked and shot by the police. We sued by the government. the police even work with the gangster to attack our citizens. This is exactly what happened in Ukraine in 2014, well known as the Revolution of Dignity or Maidan Revolution. Seems I can give a conclusion to see this is the logic of tyranny, what they will do. Currently, we have over 1,900 political prisoners in Hong Kong. Most of them are not politicians, but just citizens from grassroots level, just like all of us. I believe more and more are coming, and many of them are already in the custody, trapped over years for just waiting to be going through the court procedure. It is ridiculous and unacceptable. Those people who sacrifice their life and their time are still waiting for us to get their justice back. If you stand on a higher staircase and look, it is not difficult to find China, Russia, North Korea, Hungary. They are forming an evil alliance. Even behind the scenes to send equipment and soldiers to support Russia's invasion of Ukraine. To stop their aggression and ambition, we must unite and fight back together. Our immediate action and mission is to stop the proposal of the Chinese mega embassy at the World Meat Court in London. China's biased activities and transnational repression become increasingly serious and blatant. Here are some examples. Hungary signed an agreement with China to let Chinese police to patrol in Hungary, which is really unreasonable, right? I cannot understand why Hungary will let foreign countries to do that in their homeland. I can never accept this. Hong Kong government is offering a reward of 1 million Hong Kong dollars for the arrest of Hong Kong activists. I believe Tibetans may have similar experience already and know the consequence very well. You may have heard about the London Economic and Trade Office buying case reported by the media a few months ago. This office is just tiny and very small, but there was already a case of spiraling happening. Can you imagine that what's going to happen if the Chinese mega embassy is built in central London? It will be over 600,000 square feet, 10 times the size of its existing facility right now. If this monster is built, it will be largest embassy in the UK, but also the European. This will be over, there will be over 200 residents inside this mega embassy. I cannot imagine how terrible things will happen inside and to our comrades, including Taiwanese, including Tibetans, Uyghurs, Hong Kongers, and even Ukrainian activists. I think we will be very easily targeted by CCP and Russia. I think it's time for us to stand together to say no to CCP. Say no to CCP!
No!
Say no to CCP!
No!
Say no to CCP!
No!
That's why I sincerely invite all of you to join our protest on 15th of March at 3 p.m. outside the World Meat Court. Everyone make a small step can make a great impact. Don't ever underestimate yourself. All together, we will win.
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 Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jay. Jay, coming all the way from Manchester is really an inspiration to all of us, especially to our Tibetan youths. You inspired us, and thank you also for sharing your insights. And we will definitely stand with the people in Hong Kong. We stand in solidarity with you, and together we can fight the Chinese repression and their violations of human rights inside Tibet, Uyghur, and all those regions under their oppression. So, as I also give your words, we will stand with you in making the loud noise to protest for the mega embassy. Okay, we will be there, and Tibetans will surely join that, and also Uyghur. Together, we can fight. Okay, and now we are going to have Mr. Engi Jirgalan, Yuru Yongar, Voice of Southern Mongolia. Thank you. Did I say your name right?
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, friends of freedom, defenders of truth. Today, as we gather to make the solemn anniversary of the Tibetan Uprising of March 10th, 1959, I speak to you as a representative of the Southern Mongolian people. I speak not only with words, but with the shared pain of our peoples, the collective memory of our struggles, and the undying hope that unites all oppressed nations. On this day, 66 years ago, the people of Tibet rose up against the brutal occupation of the Chinese Communist Party. They rose in defense of their culture, their religion, their sovereignty, and their dignity. In response, the Chinese regime responded with violence, and His Holiness the Dalai Lama, along with thousands of Tibetans, was forced into exile. From that moment, the Tibetan government in exile was born, a beacon of resilience and a symbol of peaceful resistance. As Southern Mongolians, as brothers and sisters in fight, in history, and in suffering, we stand shoulder to shoulder with the Tibetan people. Tibet is not just a land on the map. It's a headland of Tibetan Buddhism, the scary land of the snow mountains. For Mongolian people, whether in Mongolia proper, I mean the independent country of Mongolia, and in southern Mongolia, in Buryatia or Kalmykia, it's a country in Russia, but the majority of population is here, the Tibetan Buddhism. Tibetan Buddhism is our spiritual foundation. The faith of Tibet is inseparable from the faith of our shared faith, our cultural identity, and our historical legacy. Our bond is not new, it is ancient and deep. Countries ago, Aslan Khan of Mongolia invited the Tibetan Guruk school into Mongol lands and helped establish the Tibetan Buddhism as a spiritual tradition of our people. Mongol royalty and Tibetan spiritual leaders work hand in hand to build a scary alliance that transcends borders. Our histories and woven together, our futures too must be. Sadly, Southern Tibet was occupied by the Chinese regime. So, towards southern Mongolia, the Chinese Communist Party used similar tactics of military occupation and the creation of a puppet socialist state under the guise of the Inner Mongolia Autonomous Region. But there is nothing autonomous about it. In 1941, long before Tibet was invaded, our people in Udumchimbana stood up in revolt against the Chinese proxy warlord Ulan Hu's Chop and encouraging communist presence. The resistance was fierce, and the price was tragic. Over half of Udumchin population was forced to flee into modern-day Mongolia, our brother nation. Before the Chinese occupation, we had created an independent Mongolia state, the Bogd-Khanate, a spiritual and political union under Tibetan Buddhism. The region was crushed beneath the boot of foreign domination. Under the CCP rule, the southern Mongolian people have been subjected to what can only be described as cultural genocide. Our language has been banned in schools. The image of Genghis Khan, our national identity, has been removed from classrooms and public life. Our streets are being stripped of our script, our heritage, our soul, and those who speak out, like our most prominent human rights defender, Mr. Haddad, was prescribed prescribed with reckless cruelty, nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. He now suffers a hospital ICU under suspicious attachments, a green echo of what happened to Liu Xiaobo. What the world sees in Tibet, the destruction of monasteries, the criminalization of religion practice, the surveillance, the censorship, the arrest. We, the people of Southern Mongolia, have seen too. Our scars match, our pain is mingled, but so is our resistance. To our Tibetan brothers and sisters, you are not alone. Your struggle is our struggle. Your voice is our voice. We stand with you, not just in word, but in our worldly solidarity. One day, we believe, both our nations shall be free. One day we shall rebuild what has been broken. One day our children shall speak their mother tongue without fear. And our fight shall flourish once more under than skies. Until that day, we remain united, Southern Mongolia and Tibet, against tyranny, against oppression, and the pursuit of future of dignity, justice, and national self-determination. May the spirit of Tibetan uprising life in every heart of longers for freedom. Thank you. Free Tibet! Free Tibet! Free Southern Mongolia!
Free Southern Mongolia!
Free Kyrgyzstan!
Free Kyrgyzstan!
Free Hong Kong!
Free Hong Kong!
Keep Taiwan free!
Keep Taiwan free!
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, my brother. And thank you for sharing our connection of origination, tradition, and religion. And we also stand with you. And thank you for coming here today and speaking for us and standing in solidarity with Tibetan people. And we will stand together and we'll fight together and we'll work in collaboration in future. Thank you. And last but not the least, we have got our chairperson of Tibetan Community in UK, Mr. Pinso Nola, to come and say a few words. Thank you.
Hello, good afternoon to everyone. I start with, I'm telling the Chinese CCP that I was born in Tibet, I come from Tibet, and my parents are Tibetans. So I'm wearing Tibetan dress, chupa, so CCP will never make me a Chinese again. I will be Tibetan forever. Tibet will be free. And CCP need to resume dialogue with representative of His Holiness the Dalai Lama as soon as possible. So we commemorate 66th Tibetan National Uprising Day today. We remember those Tibetans who sacrificed everything, those who lost their lives, those who are imprisoned, those who have become a minority in their own land, suffering continuously under the CCP government. On behalf of the Tibetan community, Free Tibet, Global Alliance for Tibet and Persecuted Minority, let us give a huge round of applause for all the speakers at the 10 Downing Street, former MP Norman Barker, Luke D. Pulford, Executive Director of the IPEC, Kusang Civil TCB Campaign Coordinator, Mandy Macron, the Executive Director of ITN, Speaker at the Chinese Embassy, Tenzin Rapka from Free Tibet, Roana Phil, York Tibet Support Group, J. Fangdo Freedom Card representing Hong Kong, Inga Jinka Ling, Voice of South Mongolia, and Rahima from Stop Uyghur Genocide. So we are grateful to them today, speaking on important day. Your support, your insight, powerful words means everything. Taking this chance, I want to say a big thank you to Tibet Support Groups, Friends of Tibet, fellow Tibetans, for joining the protest march. Each participant will play a crucial role making our voice heard. Your presence, your voice, your commitment make a real difference. Thank you for your dedication, courage in standing up for justice and freedom. Together we are stronger. Together we will continue to fight for justice and the rights of the Tibetan people, South Mongolia, Hong Kong, East Pakistan, and so on. Democracy thrives when people like it stand up for it. You support means everything. Once again, thank you for your solidarity in our long, peaceful struggle for freedom. May peace prevail in Tibet. Long live His Holiness Dalai Lama. Tibet belongs to Tibetan. China live, people die. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Chairperson, Mr. Pinzo Nola, for such a powerful thank you speech. And I think with this we have come to the end of our program here. We are going to do some chanting for a few minutes before we leave. And then we have got the next event in YMCA. So before we stop this, I want to say thank you, all of you, the Tibetans, the non-Tibetans, our support group, and our speakers, everyone who came here today to join a procession, people inside Tibet, and we feel that your presence is very, very important, and thank you for taking out your time and coming here today. We really appreciate your presence, and thank you for your solidarity. 아니 먼저 딱 디젤라 딱 먼저 디기 제고 두기래 안델라 카마카시 때 숨게게나 아 먼저 갈래 갈로 파 디게 YMC라 페레 아니 먼저 상마 we are going to take one group photo. Yeah, looking this way.
Hello everyone. So we are going to start the evening program at here YMC. I want to welcome everyone, all guests and all the Tibetans. So today we commemorate the 66th National Uprising Day that happened back in 1959. So today is one of the greatest days in Tibetan history. At the same time, one of also very important day. We remember that like hundreds of thousands of Tibetan martyrs, Tibetan heroes, powers, they came on the street of the Lhasa, Nobulinga, protect His Holiness Dalai Lama, and from that day onwards, they are thinking about like the bright future. Even is very difficult time, invasion, occupation, and like large number of Chinese liberation armies marching into Tibet. So yeah. I want to say thank you everyone for coming today on behalf of Tibetan community in Britain and also our co-hosts Free Tibet and Global Alliance for Minorities and Tibet. So let's start with the Tibetan national anthem, please. Next we have Tibetan patriotic song by Tashi from Bristol and Mr. Sherab Gensena. Please welcome the stage. Digila ani bhegi geshen ta dui thoni ani sheta ani lesin chigore digana rangsen da mongsho ni she ti thana Tashi Bristol da ani Sherab konso tangire ani Tashi da konso gi kadui ne de shero stangire 아니 다시나기 channel 팀ing like bistro 다시 bistro 아니 디치 셀렉션
저슬레 참말로 아니 당연히 유네를 지금 어제 미세 쇼고 말에 상거도 딱지 사탄 쇼게 내 단어 발지 지금 어제 쇼도 좀 신수 봐봐 시랑 것이 그래 자시든지 것이 그래 당가도 참말로 가서는 거니 지보 모임 받지 단다 롱쇼 셰레 삼미 싱그레 아니 너무서 야샤고나제 가르치고나제 깨자고나 노쇼스 냠도 담고 쉬어야와 아니 내 땅에 지 단위 개발다 깨야보치네 땅고 말에 지 소속의 소외돈이 맞지 최제된 돌아 땡도에게 먼저 매지 치고 와봐 대디 선반나마다 강무고 쉬우샤 고가 쉬우샤 너무서 사명인의 롱쇼스 깨자게 선반라 아니 냠도 쉬자르나 쉬어야 랑제 쉬어야 Thank you. Chiloni Gojene, Sunju Tenune, Chisube Lune, Laya Beda Domodu, Jajima Pame, Logo, Logo Mota Cheso, Losho.
Next, I want to request Pema Chudrena to read a short extract from His Holiness Dalai Lama's last 10 my speech. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Pema Chudrena. I'm one of the TCB Council member. Today, as we mark the 66th anniversary of Tibetan National Uprising Day, I would like to remind us all that His Holiness has made 10th March statement from 1961 to 2011 until he completely retired from the political responsibility. This means he has made 51 statements to call upon PRC to resolve the issue of Tibet and for world peace. His Holiness the Dalai Lama is a beacon of kindness and compassion, not only for the Tibetan people, but for the entire world. Despite the immense hardships faced by Tibetans, he has remained a steadfast symbol of peace, advocating non-violence, dialogue, and understanding. His deep empathy and wisdom has inspired millions, transcending cultural and religious boundaries. Through his teaching, he encouraged love, forgiveness, and the recognition of shared humanity. Whether working to preserve Tibet's rich spiritual heritage or promoting global harmony, the Dalai Lama's unwavering dedication to compassion continue to uplift and guide people toward more just and peaceful world. I would like to read a short excerpt from His Holiness' last 10th March statement. For more than 60 years, Tibetans, despite being deprived of freedom and living in fear and insecurity, have been able to maintain their unique Tibetan identity and cultural value. More consequentially, successive new generations who have no experience of free Tibet have courageously taken responsibility in advancing the cause of Tibet. This is admirable, for they exemplify the strength of Tibetan resilience. The earth belongs to humanity, and the People's Republic of China belongs to 1.3 billion citizens who have the right to know the truth about the state of affairs in their country and world at large. If citizens are fully informed, they have the ability to distinguish right from wrong. Censorship and restriction of information violate basic human decency. For instance, China's leader considered the communist ideology and its policy to be correct. If this were so, these policies should be made public with confidence and open to scrutiny. The Chinese government claimed there is no problem in Tibet other than personal privileges and status of the Dalai Lama. The reality is that ongoing oppression of Tibetan people have provoked widespread deep resentment against current official policies. People from all walks of life frequently express their discontentment that there is a problem in Tibet is reflected in Chinese authority failure to trust Tibetans and win their loyalty. Instead, the Tibetan people live under constant suspicion and surveillance. Chinese and foreign visitors to Tibet corroborate this grim reality. I would like to take this opportunity to remember the kindness of the leaders of various nations that cherish justice, Member of Parliament, intellectuals, and Tibet support group who have been steadfast in their support for Tibetan people. And to all of them, I offer my heartfelt gratitude with the prayer and for the welfare and happiness of all sentient beings. Thank you.
Thank you, Pamela. Next, I want to request Tibetan Community in Britain Chairman, Mr. Pinto Labula, please.
The mid Rawan Gela, thank to see the Tuki, Ani, Jawola Pepe, Ani, Kundito, Inji to so to Misuba, Timmy or Cho, and the Anashi, Kutaptinje, Sri Anji Cho, and Tanshi, Kongotu Naba, and the Anashi, Kakioa, and the Anashi, Ranzo, Perupeta, Samala, some leadership at Kasushuya. Ani that simple so much can be and drink that they were transferred to the good Japan. Ani Tandabat to say the Odimba, Kasum the whatever, Ani Ranshopa, Real Bara Greenwich, Ani Vigida, Tintu Chapel, the Maranzo Sicilian San do, and on Para Franz, the Jeda, Ryan, in German, Kutsu, that long to say. Moving to say, Pevala, Capion number, Demon Zoyanchi, Tenuku, some Tekido, and the Jeda, Tinzo, and a Nabeka Sumaranzo, Comotin Jetan, and the Tunjela Pere, and the Tanshi Pritsopa, and the Tanshi Tripasanga, and the Tanshi Sane, Pelato, Paper, Atanashi, Bushla Johnson, and the Dijela, Maranzo de Juji, the Cheka Yorjani, Inji Silu. Leon Dula Zolmi, and he was just to duty, and to go to the anybody the what to so Mana Sambala Chidan said what ready Mimambochi Laga Yore and Mambochi Labda Yudi Shibuji Yumari to some stay near Rangi Saba Shishun Remington Kalazan Mambo Peso Anigashika Tamshan and Gates or Chick Nawatopota Ani Manam the same Shako at the Tamshan Mambos Naso Ani the Ranishin Nimun Java choose Tan Yaman Sendam as a Jamishun Zatan Niam to tell to Tobare and the young chick and the Petunia Joy and Sobaka Mambochi or to some Kalazan the Jew or Konams of Kutachini, Konams of people to sing in Nabate, Shukchambo, then also anyway Consola to Chishuela. Ani ring what the la Manzo Inji Lupachico Mare, the Hanashi Inji Lupani around the Kuza, Pepachuchi and Nedelum Kesa, Hegla, Ani Europe Pedium the girl. Say Aniti, you would the Nimchi, Manzo Pepachuchi, Chimbare, Nipan, Pada, the auto chick, Tatukota, Rutukota, Yabuchu, to check it into Shisha, and understand it into Shisha, and the day another that day drink another Zoni, and then another chick, drink Modi, Karesna, Pemiron, Gelan, Chinogo Yamachumaku, Rewan Gelan, Jawa Tomatile, and drink Modalan around the Permanent show in Yumadi. Shazan Maranzo, to sing in Chia, and the other she, Pella, Mampuchi, Kula, Namkure, and it about the same shoe machan, Jai to poke the Tamana, Rank Rishunda, and ranking Marika, ranking Motala, Kanje, Pesu to which and the name was on the Manzoji, Chikere Yubana, Maranzo, simply come again, Nuba and Maranzo, Topaka, Sopan, to Minshooting, Chadu Mindating, and Shatusha, Robachi, Keshu, Kajina, Maranzo, Puyuti, Jalu, Judo, Pura, so Mubala, Anu Chatu, intending Maranzo, the Ruchi, Ranki Jayka, Reshim Studio, Machevaina, Chijani, Sabuya, Capore, Maranzo captured the Maranzo chief of Odiji, Tesutan, Yugajina, Maranzo Santana, Lando, and Santa, Tibetan, Cesar Didi, Maranzo, Pergamati, Sama, Kingo, the Gaida, Patting Maranzo, the Tibet, and Nedon, Suet, Cheshi, Jenny, and the good seasons, Japuyo, and it gave me Maranzo of Gear, Maranzo Pergamati, the Babam way to do, no Chana Haku, Maparuchi, Hesada, the Pergamina, Misegi. Tambachi Yoga. Any Gago sense in Dr. Chair. What did it? Any Papa Chair, the Chicken. Can we read the Paranzo, the two parts of Chidi, around the Penana to Woyo? Then never did it chat there. And the Pure that Maranzo Neduti, Yiri, the one, Lolo, do good to Woyo. Jazan, Maranzo, what in the Twitter of Chicago or somebody to take go. And it answered that Chingo would ya, not too that one, such a one, Chutumi, Penny, and it very convincing the Polar China Hans Siam, was some Gatti, Jajam, well, they said, Yami, then to Jenny, one Chutuma, and it gave the government, Piocan said that shit. Then you are Penny, Java, and young ladies on a Shuduchi, Rishuka, we love that to me, the two to me, go back to it in the night. And what is the Chigere that? You want somebody to repent, Yagami, Chigere. That Chigere not to deal with Shisha, Gobata, Yanji, Lata, the Chico Medi, Maranzo, Provas the Gay King. When it is some of Mana Baina, Manzo duty, Naka, which is somebody to do. Chedama, 3 day, Keja, Mabushi, Nijala, coming on the Tanapanato, Keva, Mamu, you are red, and it, the Dejimani, and it, Peggy, Dana. You do some Valana. Can you over punishing of the Panda to one Malichon, Jerez, or 10 years shall be city to them.
Thank you, Punsonola. The next, may I request Mr. Yankila, the representative of His Holiness Dalai Lama, and sent the Tibetan administration to read the Kasha statement.
토마텔라 디지니 겸네 되게 취신이 나나메도 오티 진을 벌써 경고 제보죠. 구제 생포 배치에 자대 된데 우리 겸에 가디 제서 제베 돈에 한타리 데디가 숨지도 되게 슝데 제골라 체르만에 페베 아니 구샵 팀 라우든 초 다나시 아니 배드인 격결 소마 가기 고작 남바 아니 페미틱 속에 고작 등줄 수번 남바 다나시 아니 말아서 배디 소마기 교례 땅 교례 남바 다나시 아니 배드인 격결와 아니 배기 좋고 다나시 말아서 배디 근데 용라 아니 다른 게 못되라 말아서 정말 아니 마케메 요말에 납주나 그로 다른 게 못되라 아니 말아서 배미 참마 계신 person 마저 삼바치 때 마부이 당하기 토네 배 예선 하살라 아니 개말 별에 전주치에 나 모고지에 쳐도 좀 쳐보지 나와 쳐네 아니 되더니 숨을 닫아봐도 무슨 줄 들은디 제고 송지 쉬면 쉬면래 다른 게 님보디 말아줘 여기 나라 개치식 이창이래 말아줘 되게가 가서 전주라 폐 저런 거 생각해 보고 싶어 토네 아니 전주라 폐 고백이 고백 경쟁대 다른 님은 다 태가를 되어 차대요래 다인장 믹스 먹고 싶어요 말에 정말 다른 가지 개치만 남아서 캔디 캐시 말에 개치식이라 아니 말아줘 된 가라 나부터 남양 제주에 말에 딱 말아줘도 별이 민본 명시가 하네 맞아 다 지게 뭔가 가서 카드를 못 들고 해서 개치식이라 하는 말아줘 뭔가 가서 카드지나 수수기 대 전주라 폐 고백이 미유디 마제베 토네 도자 찍찍이 토네 아니 나라도다 미랍 제우 여기 예장 아니 피치시 베기 된다 마세 봐도 대시도 아니 나라도 미랍 심받잖아다 내게 마스나 나라도 미유디 대서나다 아니 찌드디 제디 페마스 계속 차대래 아니 한번도 아니 나라도 미랍 심받잖아다 미베도야다 아니 나라도 저기 먼저 치게 넘바 내가 내가 차례 내가 알아서 되게 내가 이제 된데라는 소속이 풀라 되게 뭐예요 그러고 디시에르레 아니 소속 배den토라 된 남양 가서 맞지에 토네 아니 소속 레그 카드페 기코가 남자디 당진 제보를 해야겠다 나는 지금 짜대기 토네 아니 못해네 도시마 메랍 쇼바잖아 kalore yunga suye danga ziduna de pemasi keje muchagore sangudu ane etezato mambu keshe me ane engol spirit da samalo ane tabor tungara zita dokza chidi chegwe pemasi keje mure mazu pege tambela lawana kasa namda machine chi tentuwe yo maresane ta ono spirit chaden tunda lena mazu ta gegita tischige tawalonjo khari matim de sama yabar kyune ta duela 뭐직 두디에 통에 페마스 키즈 그랬어요. 이 안에 되다도 생각하고 나서니 안타나 인터넷 비즈 시초지. Honorable former member of Parliament Tim Loughton and representatives of former representatives of Central Tibetan Administration and members of Free Tibet, International Tibetan Network, Tibetan Community in Britain, Lagar Vigil Team, Tibet supporters, friends and fellow Tibetans. As you all know, 66 years ago today, on the 10th March, in Tibet, my country, men from all walks of life, monastics and lay people, men and women, nomads and farmers, rose up voluntarily against the Chinese illegal occupation of Tibet, but the Chinese military brutally oppressed and crushed the peaceful Tibetan protest, leading to the flight of our beloved leader, His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama, to exile, and then beginning of our struggle from exile to restore freedom to Tibet. So as we commemorate the Tibetan National Uprising Day, I would like to tell my brothers and sisters back home in Tibet that we are always with you. We are always with you, and also I take this opportunity to sincerely remind the Chinese leadership, Mr. Xi Jinping, that resolving Tibet issue within the lifetime of His Holiness the Dalai Lama would be the best and wisest decision, because His Holiness the Dalai Lama, as the beacon of hope and Nobel Peace Laureate and the symbol of compassion, he genuinely and honestly cares for the both sides equally. So now let me read the Kashak statement on the 66th anniversary of Tibetan National Uprising Day. Years ago in Tibet's capital Lhasa, Tibetans from all three provinces unitedly rose up against the illegal occupation of Tibet and China's brutal inhuman policies and practices in Tibet. Under the violent suppression of Chinese forces, over 1 million Tibetans lost their precious life and compelled the legitimate Tibetan government led by His Holiness the Great 14th Dalai Lama, followed by approximately 80,000 Tibetans into exile. This marks the darkest and most critical period in the history of Tibet. As we commemorate the National Uprising Day, we honor our brave martyrs and express solidarity with our brothers and sisters inside Tibet who continue to languish under the oppressive Chinese government. In these past 60 years, and more so today, under the current Chinese leadership, a deliberate and dangerous strategy to eliminate the very identity of the Tibetan people as a unique and human race is clearly evident. Under the pretext of strengthening the consciousness of Chinese national unity, the Chinese government is implementing extensive sinicization policies that is resulting in the gradual annihilation of Tibetan identity and deprivation of fundamental human rights of the Tibetan people. Furthermore, under its sinicization campaign, large-scale restrictions are imposed in the monasteries with complete denial of freedom of religion, and over 1 million young Tibetan children have been forcibly enrolled in colonial-style boarding schools across Tibet. Under the guise of promoting the national common language, the use and teaching of Tibetan language is severely restricted. The Chinese government's unchecked mining and construction projects have invariably caused extensive damage to the Tibet's rich natural environment, with severe implications for far beyond its borders. All these acts and practices of China defies not only international and domestic laws but even the basic human values. Tibetans, nurtured by the far-sighted vision and unwavering compassion of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, have not harbored hatred or animosity towards the communist Chinese government that has occupied our homeland and caused the untimely death of more than 1.2 million Tibetans and destruction of over 6,000 monasteries. As envisioned by His Holiness, Tibetan people remain committed to the path of non-violence and dialogue in finding a lasting and mutually beneficial solution to resolve the Sino-Tibet conflict through middle way approach. It also reaffirms our confidence that the Tibetan people, the rightful custodians of the Tibetan plateau since its formation, embody unique religious and cultural traditions that cannot be erased, an indomitable spirit that cannot be broken, and an unparalleled leadership of His Holiness the Dalai Lama that cannot be replaced. Marx maintained that oppressed nationalities have the right to self-determination, and he opposed national oppression, national exploitation, while criticizing nationalism. However, the communist Chinese has turned its back on its founders' ideology and forcibly imposed a fabricated concept of Chinese nationhood on all ethnic groups, including the Tibetan people. Tibetans are politically treated as lower class citizens, requiring constant surveillance in all their activities day and night. Tibetan children are forced to learn Chinese language and communist ideology, and Tibetan Buddhism is being sinicized. These policies contradict Marxist principles and violate international laws, while the communist regime continues to inflict irreparable damage to the historical friendship between Tibetans and Chinese people. According to Western calendar, His Holiness the Dalai Lama turns 90 this year. As announced earlier by the Central Tibetan Administration, the year will be celebrated as the Year of Compassion. The essence of this celebration is to learn, practice and promote the four commitments of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. The best way to address Tibet's immediate and long-term challenges for us Tibetans is to understand and follow the path shown by His Holiness the Dalai Lama. The indomitable spirit of Tibetans inside Tibet is the foundation of Tibetan people's aspiration, which inspires and strengthens the determination and commitment of the Tibetans in exile. We must face all the challenges confronting us with courage and in unity under the benevolent leadership of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. The Kashap would like to take this opportunity to express our gratitude to governments, including the Government of India, organizations and individuals who have supported the Tibetan cause and the welfare of the Tibetan community. In conclusion, we earnestly pray for the long life of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. May the truth of Tibet prevail. The Kashap, 10th March 2025. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Miss Sringila. Next, may I request Mr. John from Free Tibet.
Thank you for inviting me to speak at the 66th anniversary of the Tibetan Uprising. It's a real honor. We remember on this day the sacrifice and the courage of those who rose up in 1959. We pay tribute to those who refused to be cowed by those who wish to oppress them, by those who refused to be defined by their oppressors, by your refusal to be defined by your oppressors. We remember the Dalai Lama's escape into exile and the seeds he planted, which have turned into this Tibet movement, and the democratic institutions that he had the vision to create, and which have shown the world what a free Tibet could look like. And where the story goes from there, as it is a story that's still being written, is in part up to us. I was invited today to talk about the state of the movement and where the Tibet movement's campaigns are. And I think I have to get the bad news out of the way, although we all know it, and say that in the past few months, we've seen enough adversity to fill, I would say, a decade. The earthquake in Shigatse in January has cast a shadow over our celebrations that we normally hold at this time of year together. And the agony is intensified by the fact that Tibet is closed off from the world and that we still do not know the extent of the damage or the number of casualties. In December, the Chinese government announced the construction of the world's largest hydropower dam in Tibet, emblematic of the way that its mega development projects are tearing up Tibet's land and choking Tibet's rivers and displacing its people. We've seen China attempt to promote the politicized term rejected by Tibetans for your homeland, Xizang, and regrettably, some institutions, including in the UK, adopting the term thoughtlessly. And then in February came the news that US aid cuts have affected Tibetan institutions, including some of the organisations in this room, including my organisation, and that these effects trickle down and affect all of us. But despite this adversity, when I look back over the past 10 years, where we were then and where we are now, I see reasons to hope, and I want to give a few of them. For one thing, as we saw today, and as we saw at the protest against the mega embassy in Royal Mint Court, the Tibetan community in the UK has new friends, and it's able to work with its cross-movement allies in the Uyghur community, the Hong Kongers, the Taiwanese, the Chinese dissidents, the Southern Mongolians. We speak at each other's events, we make each other's events bigger, and when we turn out on the streets together, we can bring thousands of people to challenge the CCP here. And it's here where we win most of our victories, and with luck that will include the rejection of this super embassy. Another reason to be hopeful are the new friends that we're making in Parliament. When the new regulations came into force, raising the number of MPs that all party parliamentary groups were supposed to have, there was some concern that the Tibetan all party parliamentary group would not get off the ground. 21 MPs answered the call, and there are other friends in Parliament who are not in your party parliamentary group. And I think you'd be remiss at this stage as well not to pay tribute to Tim Lawton for the work that he did in your party parliamentary group, when you were more of a solitary voice. And then the other thing that gives me hope, as I've seen over the past 10 years, are the development of young Tibetan campaigners, young Tibetan leaders. Some of you are in the room today, and I know that there's a massive contingent of them in the Netherlands as well. And they now stand shoulder to shoulder with the more experienced members of the Tibetan community. They're leading protests, they're speaking at events, they've brought Students for Free Tibet back to life. Free Tibet, and I know the Tibet Network and some of the other established NGOs are ready to work with them, ready to support you, ready to show that we have your back, and also to learn from you in the spirit that the Tibet movement is strongest when it's led by Tibetans. The work you're doing in universities and the campaigning on the streets is already elevating the movement, and we're seeing some of the results. The topic of hydropower dams, I mentioned in Tibet, is being covered in the mainstream media, and that gives us a good platform to challenge this government, including Minister Ed Miliband as he flies to China next week to discuss green energy cooperation between the UK and China. We pushed back together against the Xizang in the British Museum and several other institutions, as well as in France and in the US. We've scored campaign wins against enormous companies like Thermo Fisher, who were selling DNA kits to police in Tibet to be used to monitor the Tibetan people. And we've seen, last week I believe, the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights mentioned Tibet directly at the Human Rights Council. These are achievements by the people sitting in this room and our allies, and it shows what we do when we work together. Now, I think the other reason that I was invited to speak today is because this will be my final 10th March as the head of campaigns at Free Tibet. And I suspect that when the largest Tibet support group in the UK loses its campaigns manager, there's some cause for concern. I think I'd like to set the record straight on that here. First, I will say that, to speak about myself for 2 seconds, if you have my number, if you're in contact with me, then we're friends. And it will be as a friend, not as a campaigns manager, that you can contact me starting from April. The Tibet movement doesn't just need professionals. It needs ordinary citizens who are educated and have the conviction and the confidence to act when it comes to Tibet. And I think that is now how we'll have to treat me. Secondly, free Tibet is not going anywhere. As long as there are people on this earth, there will be a free Tibet. Because when Free Tibet, the organisation, wraps up, it will be because there is once again a free Tibet on the Tibetan plateau. And then finally, because we have each other, I started to refer to the Tibet movement in the UK, not as a group of organisations, but almost like an ecosystem, where as long as people remain, we haven't lost them. It's an ecosystem in which my prized former colleague and very good friend Tenzin Kunga can leave Free Tibet, but he hasn't left because he now works at the Office of Tibet. And it's where former grandees of Free Tibet, like Mandy McEwen and Alison Reynolds, can leave Free Tibet, but they still work at the Tibet Network. And taking it on the opposite way, it's where someone like my colleague and friend Tenzin Rabga can come from the Tibetan community and become a valued colleague at Free Tibet. I have no doubt that in the future more members of the Tibetan community will come to work for Free Tibet. In the meantime, we're there to support you, to offer training, to work alongside you in events like this and in demonstrations, making sure that the movement stays strong. I think I'll leave it there, but I'll just say to all of you, thank you, and Tujeche, and Bogiano.
Thank you, John. Dijila seda kajishedra, tana zubri tobagi, tana momo tasha ni komunga ngayin, sonsa ni tana momo shera penyanara, and then the last day la table chiti or free Tibet ki table de la and the next day lance Tibetan wisdom ki tana ngaje di pena ki chala tonga da nusama pagi la yore, and kians number of sinna. And the profit that sama like Tibetan wisdom ki project down at the podcast, language class, and then the translation inspiration project kashi chigoda next may I request chief guest Mr. Tim Lawton, former member of parliament and the co-chair of All Party Parliament for Tibet. Please welcome, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, representative of His Holiness, the former representative of His Holiness, distinguished guests and friends, there's not a lot left to say. And I also feel a bit of a fraud because most of you have been marching and have been at Westminster and outside the Chinese embassy, whereas I just get to come along for the momos and to say a few words at the end. But as I've said before, my very first demonstration as a spotty teenager was outside the Chinese embassy with those from the Tibetan movement back in the 1970s. So I have done it quite a lot before, but well done everybody. And can I also pay tribute to John? John's going to be a big loss when he goes to Brazil, of all places. But I look forward to seeing a very large pro-Tibetan movement emerge in the Latin American continent in due course. John has helped the All-Party Group enormously over the years, and I was in Parliament for 27 years, and one of my proudest achievements, if I had any, was my links with the Tibetan community and being able to get up in Parliament, often as a lone voice some years ago, to put forward the case of the outrageous acts that were going on in Tibet and against the Tibetan people by the Chinese regime. We got more and more friends as the years went on. As John's just said as well, the movement that's thrown the spotlight on what the Chinese government had been up to since the 1950s in Tibet, and now against the Uyghurs in Xinjiang, in Hong Kong, against Mongolians and others, have now become headlines across the world. So we are making progress, but there is so much more to do. And so it's so important that we come together on March the 10th to commemorate those very brave men and women in Lhasa who rose up against the oppression of the Chinese Communist Party government and the Red Army back in 1959, which led to the flight of His Holiness. We should never forget the bravery of those back in 1959 and those who have sought to stand up against oppression ever since, both inside Tibet and outside of Tibet as well. It's a great honour to be invited here today. It was a great honour to be invited to help celebrate Losar with you just over a week ago, and I was very touched to be presented with a photograph from His Holiness as well, which already has a pride of place in my house. We should also, as has been touched on, mention the great challenges that people in Tibet have had now with the natural disasters, with the earthquake in the new year, and the worry for many families who still don't know exactly the extent of the damage and of the victims. Now, one of the advantages of not being a Member of Parliament anymore is, firstly, I can come off my blood pressure pills, but also I can go travelling a bit. And I spent last November in the Himalayas. I took 4 weeks out and we went to Nepal and we went to the wonderful country of Bhutan. We went to Darjeeling and we went to Sikkim. We went right up north in India, as close as we could get to the China border without going over it, because I am still sanctioned by the China government. And that is still a badge of honour. So even though I'm not a Member of Parliament, I'm still sanctioned by the Chinese government, and I will use that to continue to rally people against the oppression that the Chinese government weigh on. But in my travels, we met many people from Tibet and many people with close links to Tibet, and it was greatly moving to see the struggles they've had. We went to the Women's Refugee Centre in Darjeeling, people who had come soon after 1959 and made their lives in that part of India. These are very worrying times, as everybody has said. The conflict in Ukraine has diverted the world's attention from some of the atrocities that still go on day in, day out, inside Tibet, against the Uyghurs, against freedom and liberty in Hong Kong, the sham trial of Jimmy Lai that is going on now, the spy centre which they want to build opposite the Tower of London, and I shall be at the rally again on Saturday to protest against that. And the Chinese government just don't get it, because there was a very large number of people who turned up to protest that this was not the appropriate place for the Chinese embassy, and in future there would be not enough room for people to come and demonstrate. So what did they do? They sent along a load of pro-Chinese demonstrators to demonstrate against the demonstrators, to show there was even less room to have demonstrations by those who wanted to go and demonstrate in the future. So I hope they come again, because they were very much in the minority. And I was in Sarajevo last autumn with the National Uyghur Congress, and I saw some of the death threats that have been issued against many of the members who bravely went to Sarajevo to fight their cause there as well. We have just seen the monstrosity of 40 Uyghurs being deported from Thailand back to face an uncertain future in China. There was no reason for that. Many countries offered to give them refuge, but they were sent to China because China intimidates and bullies countries and governments and local authorities across the world. And of course, we've had the recent further spy scandals within Parliament itself. So the tentacles of the Chinese Communist Party are everywhere, remain everywhere, but people are at last waking up to the threat that they pose to the security and safety of not just oppressed peoples from within China and outside China, but also other communities as well. So let me finish by echoing those comments that have been made by His Holiness the Dalai Lama. A beacon of compassion and hope and a symbol of kindness and peace, which sums up the fight of the Tibetan people. Because as I've always said, the fight of the Tibetan people is not just the fight for Tibet, but it is the fight of all just people for freedom and liberty and fairness across the whole world, which is why your cause is so important. And it is my cause, and it's the cause of Chris Law, who we've now been joined with, who's taken on the mantle of the all-party group, I'm delighted to say as well. I have never met a more resilient group of people than the Tibetan communities across the world that I've had the honour to come across. It's been a great honour for me to be able to stand up for the Tibetan people inside Parliament, but just because I've retired from Parliament doesn't mean I'm going to give up the cause, and I will continue to fight for the cause of the Tibet and the Tibetan people from outside Parliament as well. So I'll see you on the demonstration next Saturday. I'll see you on as many demonstrations as it's going to take, and we will continue to fight for the cause that those brave men and women highlighted back in 1959, 66 years ago. A cause that is important to all of us today as it was 66 years ago. Thank you again for inviting me.
Thank you so much, Tim, for long-term Tibet friend, advocating Tibet both inside and outside the Parliament for many years. Now we have one more, our guest of honor, Chris Law. Chris Law is a member of Parliament and also chair of the all-party Parliament for Tibet. Please welcome, sir.
Good afternoon, and it's a real pleasure to be here. It's my first opportunity to come along to this type of engagement, and Tim's pretty much said everything that I would have hoped he'd said. So I just first want to introduce myself. Tim and I met each other. We're opposite ends of the political spectrum of many things, but when it comes to Tibet, we've been absolutely united since I first got elected in 2015. So it's a great pleasure to be able to see Tim here again today, albeit he's supposed to be retired, but as you can see, he's clearly far from retiring. And it's going to be very large shoes that I have to fill. Just a little bit about myself. It's actually 33 years ago that I actually was in Dharamsala when I first learned about the uprisings. As a young man, I was 22 years old, and meeting other young men and women, and also first-generation Tibetans who fled all those years ago in 1959 into North India and also into South India. So I learned really my first politics, international politics, through the struggles by the Tibetan people. Despite all the oppressions that they faced in China, they stood up for their culture, their identity, their history, their music, their language, and so that may continue with its diaspora all across the world. So I would first say give yourselves a round of applause, because it's through yourselves that continues that campaign across the world and reminds Tibetans who are in exile in India that you've got a strong and loud voice. So first of all, give yourselves a round of applause. And as you could probably tell from my accent, I'm from Scotland, and As you know, Scotland has got its own campaign for its own independence. And actually, I have to say, I've spoken several times before about this. When people say to me, Chris, what inspired you to want Scotland to be independent? And I'll often say Tibet. Because Tibet has shown, regardless of all the excruciating difficulties it faces from the Chinese administration over 6 decades now, 6 decades and more in fact, that its resilience is such a power and such an influence to all movements across the world. And we must remember, autocratic leaders aren't there forever. Time changes, and with that, so long as you can continue to campaign through your history, your culture and identity, you keep that resilience strong, and you keep that for the next generations to come. Because things will change, and things hopefully will change for the future. And as Tim said right now, it's one of the most inspiring campaigns anywhere that he's been involved in over the years. So I humbly take over from Tim, but I'm sure Tim will hold my feet to the fire and make sure I do as good a job as he did. And Tim and I actually went to the Tibet conference in Riga just a few years ago. It was the first World Conference that I had attended, and I hope to attend, parliamentary time permitting, to the one in Japan this year. And also Tim and I got the privilege to meet with the Dalai Lama in 2018, if I'm not mistaken, in the autumn in Dharamsala. So, and I hope to return. So I will be in Parliament. By all means, any questions, anything you want to put down in Parliament, please come through our all-party group. It's now re-established, and I look forward to meeting some of you in the next coming hour. I've actually nipped out from, there's a very big debate tomorrow and Wednesday, which I'm leading for my party, but I thought, sod it, I want to be here and say hello to everyone. So thank you for inviting me along.
Thank you so much, Chris. Next, we have the final speaker, a word of thanks from Sringpa Chair of Global Alliance for Tibet and Persecuted Minorities. Sringpa.
Tashidele, and good afternoon. First of all, I want to thank the chairman of the Tibetan Community, Britain, Pinzo Nobula, for including Global Alliance for Tibet and Persecuted Minorities for this year's very important 10th March anniversary. And it was my pleasure to support our chairman and the community. And I also want to acknowledge, before I go into my formal presentation, both Tim Lawton and Chris Law for their support with the work the Global Alliance for Tibetan Persecuted Minorities has done over the past few years, and we are gaining some good traction now. And I want to acknowledge the recent endorsement on the op-ed Chris Law, yourself, and Lord Oldham done, which was published in the Politics Home, about calling on the UK government to support the restoration of Tibet as a buffer zone between India and China. And I hope we can press on that to secure right to self-determination for the Tibetan people in the long run. Honorable guests, fellow Tibetan supporters and friends, it's an honor to stand before you today as we mark the 66th anniversary of the Tibetan National Uprising, a day of profound significance for Tibetans around the world. On March 10, 1959, tens of thousands of Tibetans in Lhasa rose against the invading Chinese forces, the People's Liberation Army troops, courageously defending their leader, His Holiness the Great 14th Dalai Lama, and their nation. The Chinese Communist Party's response was brutal. Thousands of Tibetans were killed, many imprisoned, and the resistance was crushed with brute force. His Holiness was forced into exile, followed by some 80,000 Tibetans, including our parents and grandparents. But despite the decades of hardship, Tibetans have never surrendered their identity, their faith, or their rightful cause for freedom. Our struggle lives on. The current reality in Tibet, friends, today the Tibetan people inside Tibet continue to face unimaginable repression. Our language is under threat, with Tibetan children being forced into colonial-style boarding schools designed to erase their heritage. Our environment is being exploited, with Chinese authorities destroying sacred lands and displacing nomads in the name of so-called development. Our spiritual leaders are being persecuted, and our monasteries remain under constant surveillance. Any form of peaceful protest is met with imprisonment, torture, or enforced disappearance. Tibet remains one of the most repressed places on the earth. Yet, despite all these hardships, Tibetans continue to resist. Whether inside Tibet or in exile, we remain steadfast in our pursuit of justice. Our cause is just, and history is on our side. The Tibet struggle is not an isolated issue. The same regime that occupies Tibet is responsible for the genocide of Uyghurs, the crackdown of democracy in Hong Kong, and the suppression of Mongolian culture in southern Mongolia, as well as the ongoing threat to the Taiwanese people. The world must wake up to the reality of China's imperial ambitions. So we urge the governments, including here in the UK, to stand firm against Chinese aggression and to support Tibet's rightful claim to self-determination. This morning, as our chairman, Prince Ola, said earlier, the Tibet flag was raised at the town hall village, Royal Borough of Greenwich, in show of support and solidarity with the people of Tibet. The Royal Borough of Greenwich is the only UK local government currently hosting Tibetan flag on the 10th of March in the government building. And in Parliament just this morning, the Global Alliance for Tibet and Persecuted Minorities submitted a timely report or a statement, genocide recognition in Tibet, a moral and legal imperative. For an important event hosted by Rosie Duffield, MP, on the theme, the importance of genocide recognition. And we will follow with Chris Law and others in the Parliament in the coming days and weeks. The gist of our submission urges the UK government and the international community to recognize the ongoing genocide in Tibet and take concrete action against China's systematic destruction of Tibetan identity. Marking the 66th anniversary of the Tibetan National Uprising, we also highlighted decades of religious and cultural persecution, including evidence documented in the 1959 and 1960 International Commission of Jurists reports, and recent UN findings on China's forced assimilation policies. Up to 1 million Tibetan children are being separated from their families, while monasteries, religious institutions, and the Tibetan traditions continue to be dismantled. The UK has a moral and political responsibility to recognize Tibet's occupation, impose targeted sanctions, and push for legal accountability through international courts. If the world is serious about preventing genocide, it must act now. Silence only emboldens perpetrators. So today, from London, we send a clear message to Beijing. Tibet belongs to Tibetans. The occupation of Tibet is illegal and unacceptable. And no amount of repression will extinguish the flame of Tibetan resistance. The ongoing genocide in Tibet must end. So to all our supporters and Tibetan friends, here and at home, I say this: stay engaged, join advocacy efforts, use your voice on social media, and educate those around you about Tibet. Demand action from world leaders. Write to your MPs. It works, it helps. And call on the Yogi government to push for Tibet's rights at the United Nations and other international platforms. Never forget our history. We owe it to our ancestors and to future generations to keep our freedom struggle alive. So, before I conclude, I would like to sincerely thank and express deepest gratitude to our organizers, the Tibetan Community in Britain, Free Tibet and Global Alliance for Tibet and Persecuted Minorities, who helped put together today's protest and the commemoration event. And I must also acknowledge the Office of Tibet's vital contributions for today's important anniversary event too. To all the speakers and distinguished guests, including Representative Sri Yankila, Chris Law MP, Tim Lawton, and earlier today, Norman Baker, Liv D. Pulford from IPAC, Mandy McQueen, Rowena Field, John Jones, Rahima, Jay, and our Mongolian friends. His name is so difficult to pronounce. I'm saying Angel Jacqueline, so apologize. And to all our genuine friends of Tibet and the Tibetan people. Also to our Tibetan members who have represented us to The Hague in Netherlands, joining the Europe Dance with Tibet rally, a mega rally of Tibetan communities across Europe coming together. And all the activists and volunteers, and I must mention those who worked tirelessly in the kitchen this morning for making this delicious momos. And my old colleagues, especially the council members of the Tibetan Community in Britain, Free Tibet staff and volunteers, who have worked tirelessly behind the scenes under the strong leadership from our chairman, Tibetan Community in Britain, for making today's event very successful. And most importantly, to each and every one of you here today, for standing up for justice, for Tibet, and for freedom. I must thank the Indian YMCA for their continued warm hospitality, and also the London Metropolitan Police, who were amazing today. So thank you very much. Now, friends, our fight is long. It's a long journey, but we must stand united. As we leave here today, this Indian YMCA hall, let us carry the spirit of the March 10th forward. Tibet's story is not over. One day, Tibet will be free. Good yellow. Thank you. And we will have a very short scarf offering ceremony. So please, Chairman, so I would like to invite Her Excellency Ms. Sri Yankila, Representative of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, to offer these scarves to our speakers today. Chris Law, may I invite you on stage? And Tim Lawton, please. John Jones. We'll have a quick photo with you, is it okay?
Sure.
No copyright issue, right? Just kidding. Good.